Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast, a good morning to those watching in the Central and the West Coast zones, and to those watching from Europe, Israel, and parts beyond, we want to wish everyone a good evening. Today, we have an incredible blessing, and that is that our guest is Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Many of you know Dr. Kedar, internationally renowned, is a scholar on not only the Middle East, but is a scholar on the history and the theology of Islam. And to understand what's happening today, an intelligent, thoughtful person has to have a context, has to understand the context of what we're experiencing, the trends that are taking place both in Sunni and Shia Islam, and its ramifications for Israel, its ramifications for Western civilization. There's probably no other scholar, no greater scholar that can contextualize and can educate us than Dr. Kedar, who has a rich and varied background. And Dr. Kedar, thank you very much for taking time of your busy schedule and for addressing us on these issues, these crucial issues, to give us a context and an insight.
Thank you so much for having me here, and thanks a lot to FIDF for supporting the IDF.
Please, Dr. Kedar, if you could share with us your introductory remarks, what you want to share with us, and then afterwards, assuming there's time, we'll have a number of questions to ask you.
Okay, so I would say since the 2003, the invasion of the United States and other states to Iraq, we were surprised, I mean, many in the West were surprised to hear about this rift between Sunni and Shia who are killing each other en masse. And people, got struck by this phenomenon. Many people asked me already then, when the whole thing started. Did it start with the invasion of 2003? Or did it start in the Iran-Iraq war between 1980 and 1988? Or when, what is it all about? What are they fighting about? Well, if you dig into this struggle between the Sunni and the Shia, you'll surely find that the beginning, the roots of this struggle are actually in the minute which Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, died in 632 CE, means like almost 14 centuries ago. What is the whole thing about? Muhammad had a cousin, first cousin. His name was Ali bin Abi Talib. Ali, the son of Abu Talib. Abu Talib was the brother of Muhammad's father, Abdullah. So they were full cousins. When Muhammad died, Ali claimed that Muhammad promised him to be the caliph, means to be the substitute, means to become the leader of the people after Muhammad. They decided that they should be the successors and not Ali. And the struggle started then. Ali collected a group of people around him, and in Hebrew it says Si'ah. Si'ah is like a party in the Knesset. In Arabic it's Shia. Samech and Shin are interchangeable between Hebrew and Arabic. So in Hebrew it says Si'ah, means a party in the parliament, and in Arabic it says Shia, means a party of people who promote your cause. And this is actually the Shia, the friends of Ali, who supported his claim to power or to the caliphate, while the others pushed him aside, and he became only the third caliph. The first two ones were thieves, according to the friends of Ali. And the struggle started then. Every side developed the whole a series of hadith, means stories about Muhammad, about the big promise which Muhammad gave to Ali, and while the Sunnah, I mean the others, those who took the caliphate from Ali, who named themselves Sunnah, claimed that all the stories about Muhammad promising Ali the caliphate were all concocted by the Shia, and the whole Shia is based on lies which Ali lied about Muhammad. And as you might know, the struggle over power is the most severe struggle, is the strongest power which is being put into such a struggle, and they are fighting each other ever since Muhammad died. In many cases, they were butchering each other, especially what is remembered as the massacre of Karbala in the year of 680, when the caliph was sitting in Damascus, the Umayyad dynasty. He sent his army to kill the sons of Ali, who claimed that they should inherit the caliphate from their father. Means that they actually were rebels against the caliph, who was from the Umayyad clan. It's a fight between the clans. So he not only killed them, he also beheaded Ali, beheaded Hussein ben Ali, Hussein the son of Ali, and in order to show everybody what happens to a rebel, he put the head of Hussein ben Ali on his desk. I mean, the caliph put the head of Hussein ben Ali on his desk for a whole month, so everybody will see, and to strike terror into the hearts of the people. Beware from daring siding with these people. And
where did that take place? Where is Karbala?
Karbala is in southern Iraq, and the head of Hussein ben Ali was brought from there to Damascus, to the palace of the Umayyads, and the caliph Yazid ben Muawiyah, who was then the caliph, put the head of Hussein ben Ali on his desk for a whole month. Imagine if you put a head of your secretary on your head, all the other secretaries will obey you very easily. Okay, this is how you manage, especially in those days, how to manage the caliphate. So ever since then, the Shia, the people who follow Hussein ben Ali and his descendants, are coming out to the streets every year in the Ashura day. It is the 10th day of the first month in the Hijri, means Islamic year, which is more or less the Yom Kippur, because Yom Kippur is also the 10th day of the first month. So they commemorate the massacre of Karbala, where like 80 people were butchered, including Hussein ben Ali. And the Shia commemorate this event every year in order that for their children not to forget it ever. And this is why this struggle between the Sunni and the Shia is still bleeding already 14 centuries since Muhammad died. And during the generations, both sides developed not only the political struggle, also a theological struggle. Because in Islam, everything has to be according to the religion. So every side offered religious texts in order to justify its claim to power. And the easiest thing to forge was the hadith, the oral tradition, which was for 200 years. Oral tradition means not written tradition. So the Shia concocted hadith in order to enhance their claim to power, while the Sunnah enhanced hadith, which is totally opposite, which undermined the Shi'i claim to power. And everybody, of course, is quoting Muhammad. So how could it be? Of course, what Muslims already for 12 centuries claim that the hadith is full of forgeries, full of lies, mainly because of this struggle between the Sunnah and the Shia, which was the biggest factory for concocted stories about Muhammad, who said to Ali, or didn't say to Ali, or give him the promise for the caliphate. So this is actually the struggle over the succession of Muhammad, means the power in Islam, the rulership in Islam. And as you know, this in many countries, this struggle is, I would say, even bloody. It's ugly. It's sometimes bloody until this very day, when people are fighting for who will be elected in the next elections. And I'm not hinting to anyone in the Western Hemisphere. Ladies and gentlemen, the Sunnah-Shia rift is the longest struggle in time, the widest in geography, and the bloodiest with a number of heads which departed the shoulders of people through 14 centuries of Islam. And unfortunately, this struggle continues until this very day. The Shia are estimated to be 1 of 6 of Islam. And because they are a minority, they live in clusters, like in Iran, in southern Lebanon, in Iraq, in order to defend themselves from the wrath of the Sunnah. The Sharia, means the halakha, the Islamic law, is different between the Sunnah and the Shia. First of all, the Quran. The Shia claim the Quran includes 116 chapters, while the Sunni Quran is only 114. Means that the Shia added 2 chapters to the Quran. The Shia claim that the Quran for the Sunnis is forged because the Sunnah took out these 2 chapters, which actually support the Shi'i claim to power. The Sunnah claim that the Shi'i Quran is forged because the Shia added 2 chapters. So even the Quran is not in common between these 2 parts of Islam. The Sharia is totally different. For example, in the Shi'i Islam, a man can marry 4 wives, full wives, and concubines, as many as he can have. As zawaj mut'a means temporary marriage, means a man marries a lady for a year, and this is determined from the beginning. And after a year, she's not married anymore. This thing is allowed in the Shia. The Sunnah banned this kind of marriage because, according to the Shia, the temporary marriage can be not only for a year, it could be for half a year, it could be for a month, it could be for a week, it could be for a weekend, it could be for an hour, or even half an hour. And everybody understands what it is, a marriage for half an hour. So the Shia allows it, while the Sunnah forbids it. This is one of the differences between the Sunnah and Shia. It came to a degree that they have different courts, Sharia courts. And today, we Muslims are fasting the Ramadan. And the Ramadan starts, like every other month, with people who are witnessing, who actually see the new moon, the birth of the new moon. The problem is that they have to go to a court and to testify. It could happen that the Shi'i court accepted the witnesses and starts the Ramadan the next day, and the Shi'i and the Sunni court didn't have any witness because the Sunnis didn't see the new moon, and they didn't come to testify, and the next day will be the last day of the previous month. So it happens like in Baghdad, which has both Sunnis and Shiis, that the Shia are fasting Ramadan, while the Sunnah are still on the previous month, the last day and they still do not fast. And this can happen, and it happened through history several times in Baghdad and in other towns. So this is another difference between the Sunni and the Shia, and there are many, many more. The problem is that the Shia were usually persecuted by the Sunni, because many Sunnis view Shia as a kind of heresy, especially the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia. And they do have a minority of Shia in Saudi Arabia. Therefore, because of the persecution, the Shia developed this idea of taqiyya. Taqiyya means to make believe or make face as if. Means if you are a Shi'i and you live in a Sunni environment, and if they find out that you are a Shi'i, they will shorten you by head. You can lie and say that you are a Sunni, behave like a Sunni, while at home, in your private sphere, you behave like a Shia. Okay, so this is, and this was developed by the Shia. This ability to lie was developed to be like an art of the Shia, to a degree that in many places today, polygraph doesn't work on Shia. If they come, let's say, to a European country and they have to be investigated with a polygraph, usually the Shia know very well how to manipulate the polygraph, so the polygraph doesn't find out that they are actually lying. To that degree, the making face as if they are something else is deeply engraved in the culture of the Shia. Well, today, we can see the struggle between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Very clearly, they hate each other not only on the background of hegemony in the Gulf and the sources of oil. It's also about the fact that the Saudi are representing the Sunnah, while Iran represents the Shia. Not only this, the Iranians still remember what the Arabs who came from the Arab Peninsula did to them in the 7th century when they occupied ancient Iran, how they sold the Persians to slave, how the Arabs sold the Persians to slavery, for men to work in the fields and for the women to, you know exactly what. And until this very day, the Persians have not forgotten what the Arabs did to them in the 7th century, and they did not forgive as well. And this is also part of the tension between Saudi Arabia and Iran until this very day. Iran, it's amazing that Iran supports and arms and equips Hamas, because Hamas are Sunnah, while Iran is Shia. Why do they do this? How can we explain the fact that Iran is arming and supporting Hamas? It is very easy. Hamas was getting support from the Gulf, from Saudi Arabia, and even from Saddam Hussein, as long as he was in power until 2003. Yet, because of the terror attacks in the United States in September 11 of 2001, America banned giving money to Hamas, because Hamas was also defined as a terror organization. So no bank could transfer money to Hamas. So Saudis and Emiratis and Kuwaitis and others stopped supporting Hamas, because you cannot support Hamas and work with America, because Hamas is defined as a terror organization. So Iran came to the picture and supported Hamas to say, you Sunnis, you Saudis and Emiratis, you betrayed your brothers, the Hamas, the Sunnah. We, the Shia, we will support them. We are better than you. You don't support each other. We will give them the money, although we are Shia, just to show you that we are better than you. You traitors, you betrayed Hamas. Later, Qatar became the sponsor of Hamas, and believe me, I have no idea how come Qatar is doing it. After all, Hamas is defined as a terror organization in the United States. How come the United States did not put sanctions on Qatar? Because Qatar supported Hamas so generously through many years. Ladies and gentlemen, this is on a very short presentation about the Sunni and the Shia. I can speak about this for a whole year without stopping, because the whole thing is so complicated, and how the history developed, how the halakha, the Sharia law developed through the years. What are the restrictions of how to be a Shia in Sunni environment and vice versa? There's so much material to talk about in this issue. Books and books were written about the whole thing, and I highly encourage you guys to study Arabic and to listen to what the Shia are saying about the Sunnah and what the Sunnah are saying about the Shia. It is really interesting to hear how they curse each other, how they describe each other, and how they relate to each other. Thank you so much. And if there are questions, I will be more than happy to answer.
Professor Kedar, thank you. What I'm going to ask is something that you spoke about, but I'd like, for the sake of our participants, if you can clarify if what I'm going to say is correct, exaggerated. In the culture of the Sunnah, the reason the Shia are so evil is that they've perverted, they've bastardized and corrupted the words of what they believe are the true prophet Muhammad. They've corrupted the meaning of the Quran. And therefore, from a heretical point of view, and because today in the Islamic world, it's not like in Western culture that people may observe Christianity, but they think like a product of Western civilization. They act like a product of Western civilization. Their motivation, their tour de force as a human being is not to be a Christian, it's to be an American, a Brit, a French. That's not true today in most Arab countries. In most Arab countries, their whole modus operandi, the way they see the world, the way they act, what drives and motivates them is religiously motivated. So the hatred they have for the Shia, who have perverted and corrupted their theology, is huge. And because of that, when their fellow Sunni, as you mentioned, the fellow Sunni, the Hamas, the Palestinian Hamas, takes money from the Shia, it's the worst form of prostitution. It's the worst form of evil because they've gone, so to speak, to bed with the devil themselves. Is that an exaggeration, or is that the mindset today in the Arab world of the Sunni?
Well, about these questions, in both Sunni and the Shia, there is a whole array of ideas between total hatred or total unacceptance between both the Sunni and the Shia, all the way to the other pole, which people couldn't care less about who is Sunni and who is Shia and what they do with themselves. There is the whole continuum or whole spectrum between the most radical to this side and the most moderate on this side when it comes to relations between Sunni and Shia. You cannot generalize anything about this. This first thing. Second thing, both parts of Islam, Sunni and Shia, view the Jewish religion as null and void. The Jewish people are not a nation, are only communities of all the nations in the world. The land of Israel is an Islamic land for both of them, and Jews should be subjugated to Islam as dhimmis, people who live under the auspice of Islam. The view to the state of Israel as an illegitimate state altogether, even if it was in the size of square centimeter or square inch on the seashore of Tel Aviv, it is illegal, immoral, unacceptable, and illegitimate. Because of these reasons, the Jewish religion is null and void, so we don't need a Jewish state. The Jews are not a nation, so you don't need a Jewish state. This land belongs to Muslims, so you cannot have a Jewish state over it. And Jews anyway should be subjugated to Islam as dhimmis. And this idea or this view to the Jewish people is shared by Sunni and Shia Islam together and almost similarly. And this is why they can cooperate on the destruction of the state of Israel. And this is what makes Hamas legitimate, although they were living on money which came from Iran and Qatar, by the way, as well.
So you're saying that even in the eyes of fellow Sunni Muslims, Hamas can legitimately take money from the Shia, even though they hate the Shia, for the purposes of destroying the illegitimate state of Israel. That's what you're saying.
Yes. For the purpose of the destruction of the state of Israel, it is allowed to take money or to cooperate between Sunni and Shia.
If I could take you into a different area, if you could elaborate to us. Today, the Muslim Brotherhood has been expelled from the Emirates, has been expelled from Saudi Arabia, is illegal in Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood, which is a branch of Sunni Islam, could you describe in brief terms the theology of the Muslim Brotherhood and how other Sunni relate to the Muslim Brotherhood? And specifically, the reason I'm asking you that question is the numbers that we're being told is that at least half the population of Gaza are theologically and ideologically subscribers of the Muslim Brotherhood, active and proud participants of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Muslim Brotherhood is an organization which was established in Egypt in 1928, and it stands on three pillars, I would say. One is to get rid of the Western occupation, of the foreign occupation. In Egypt, it was Britain, which occupied the large parts of Egypt in that time. It is the French in Syria, in Lebanon, in Algeria, in Tunisia. It is the Jews here in Israel. Okay, foreign, to get rid of the foreign occupation of Islamic lands. And this also includes to get rid of Arab rulers who do not implement the Sharia, who do not adhere to Islam, like Gamal Abdel Nasser, Hafez Assad, and all those. Okay, or Saddam Hussein. They also should be considered as foreign occupation because they work according to the dictates which come upon them either from the West, means America, Europe, or from the East, the Soviet Union or China, whatever. So this is the first pillar, to get rid of the foreign occupation, including those collaborators who are ruling us for the Westerners or the others. The second pillar is to get rid of the culture of the Western societies which infiltrated into the Islamic societies, especially when it comes to gender issues, the status of women, gays and lesbians, and all these things which are connected to gender. And the second thing which they should kick out is all the systems which run the countries, like socialism, nationalism, patriotism, modernism, all these isms which came from the West, which the Islamic world should reject. And this is the second pillar, to get rid of the culture which came from the West. And the third pillar is to implement the Sharia law on the Islamic lands. These are the three pillars on which the Muslim Brotherhood are standing. The question is how, what is the timetable of the people? If they have time, what we cannot do now, we will do it in the next generation or next century or next millennium. These are people who are viewed as moderate Muslim Brotherhood. While if their timetable is much shorter and they want it now, they will be much more radical, they will be much more violent, and these are the Al-Qaeda or ISIS or the Jama'at, means the terror groups which were in Egypt, like Al-Jihad, Takfir wa Hijra, Nagul Minanar. They have many organizations of people whose timetable was shorter than I would say the mainstream of the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay, so even in the Muslim Brotherhood, they had, let's say, two poles of radicalism. One side was the leader of the 80s, his name was Hudaybi, I'm talking about Egypt, who wrote a book under the title Preachers, Not Judges. Means we are preaching, we are not judging anyone, we are not judgmental, we are not punishing anyone, we are not violent, we are preachers only. On the other side, in the Muslim Brotherhood, there was another guy named Said Qutb, who wrote a whole book about any ruler who does not implement the Sharia should be a jihad should be waged against him. So Gamal Abdel Nasser hung him up, this Said Qutb, because Gamal Abdel Nasser, what do you mean, jihad against me? Go to hell and go to the executioner. And he hung him up in 1966. So even the Muslim Brotherhood is a supermarket of ideas, but the goals of the Muslim Brotherhood are the same goals: to get rid of the foreign occupation, to get rid of the collaborators with the foreign occupation, to get rid of the culture of the foreign occupation which infiltrated into our societies, and to implement the Sharia. Hamas are very hasty, and when we saw what they did, the jihad against us on October 7th and beforehand as well.
Professor Kedar, could you share with us the support? Is it ideological? Is it political that both Erdogan in Turkey gives to the Muslim Brotherhood, as well as the support that Qatar gives to the Muslim Brotherhood? What is their motivation? In other words, is it political, or is it because they are subscribers to that ideology?
First of all, the party of Erdogan, the Justice and Development, is a Muslim Brotherhood organization. So to begin with, Erdogan is a Muslim Brotherhood leader. Secondly, in Islam, there is no difference and no part and no light even between politics and religion. The Islamic religion includes everything. They don't agree to the division between state and church, state and mosque. They don't believe in it. Because if you actually divide between religion and statehood, you actually say that God has nothing to say about the state, because you divide between the state and the religion, and they cannot accept it, Muslims, because according to Islam, Allah is omnipotent, means he has what to say about everything, about statehood, about statecraft, about economy, about sociology, about road system, about the railway system, about the electricity system, everything in life of human beings, God has, or Allah has what to say about, and everything has to be according to the Sharia law. This is why they don't accept the artificial division between state and mosque or church as it is in Europe or in secular societies. In addition to the fact that secularism, there is no such a thing in Islam. So if you announce that you leave Islam, the connection between your head and shoulder is in very severe danger.
Is it fair to say, Professor Kedar, that many of the mistakes the West has made in terms of relating to Islamic governments, whether they're Arab Islamic governments, whether it's Erdogan's government, is that the West projects itself, where there is a separation of church and state, onto the Muslim world? doesn't appreciate and is not sensitive to how their worldview, their Weltanschauung is very different than a Western mentality.
It's not about division between state and church. It's the whole mindset of the West is very rarely can be implemented in the Islamic world. Let me give you a good example. The West actually invented, as of the 13th century, the idea of democracy. As of the Magna Carta Libertatum, the big Megillah, the big scroll of rights, which was published in the 13th century in Britain. Ever since then, the monarchs started to give up on some of their authorities to a degree that today the people actually control or rule themselves by themselves. And this is actually democracy. Democracy means the rule of the people. What democracy today is, has many components, like human rights, political freedoms, freedom of women to do whatever they like, with whoever they like, whenever they like, as long as it's not by compulsion. Freedom of gays and lesbians, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, freedom from religion, and elections. Okay, let's assume that these are the components of democracy. All these components, except for elections, are either totally or partially rejected in Islamic societies. You cannot have freedom of speech in Islamic societies because if you speak against Islam, you are in big danger. A woman cannot do whatever she likes with whoever she likes, whenever she likes in Islamic world, because she has to be married first. Okay? Otherwise, she will be executed in too many places. So freedom of women in many cases is unacceptable. Freedom of gays and lesbians, non-existent. Freedom of religion, freedom from religion. If you announce that you leave Islam, you will be beheaded in most cases. And equality, which is, again, another component of democracy, is also unacceptable because in Islam, you cannot say that Muslim is in the same level like a Jew or a Christian or a Hindu or Shinto or any other religion. Because there is a rule which says, Al-Islam ya'lu wa la yu'la alayhi. This in Arabic means Islam is superior and nothing is above Islam. So you cannot say that Muslim and a Jew and a Christian and a Hindu and a Shinto and Buddhist are the same, or the same level, or are equal to each other. This is totally rejected in Islam. So almost every component of democracy is unacceptable in Islam. And this is the reason why there is not even one real democratic country in the whole Islamic world. There is not even one real democracy because they don't believe in the values of democracy. And this is why democracy is something which fits the culture of the West, because all these components are acceptable in the societies of the West. Equality, freedom of women, and so forth. While the societies in Islamic countries cannot accept these values because the societies are different. And unfortunately, people in the West view the Islamic world from the lenses of the Western culture and the Western societies, while the Islamic societies behave according to totally different rules, totally different laws, totally different mindset, totally different values. And it is very hard to understand these societies. And this is why in America, especially in Europe, Western Europe as well, they don't get it. They don't understand anything about the Islamic world. And this is why whatever the West has done in the Islamic world is a failure. Look at Afghanistan, look at Iraq, look at wherever, Somalia, wherever the West tries to do something according to Western ideas and Western mindset, it fails because it doesn't work in here. Just like, if you try to fix your, let's say, Chevrolet in a garage of Harley Davidson, it doesn't work because although I have nothing against Harley Davidson, but the Harley Davidson is not the place to take care of your Chevrolet. Okay, because Chevrolet needs the culture of Chevrolet, needs the computer of Chevrolet, needs the spare parts of Chevrolet, and needs the mechanics who know something about Chevrolet. Nothing which Harley Davidson know is applicable on Chevrolet. Okay, the same thing with cultures. Nothing which is connected to the Western culture is applicable in the East. Unfortunately, but this is what we see day and night.
Professor Kedar, thank you for spelling that out, for contextualizing and giving us that. I have two other areas, if it's possible, and I know your time is short. One of them is you have been a featured guest on Al Jazeera. We don't hold that against you, but we actually admire the fact that you're willing to speak your mind and articulate yourself there, despite the fact that, to put it mildly, Al Jazeera is no friend of Israel, no friend of Western civilization. One of the topics that you've discussed on Al Jazeera is, now that it's Ramadan again, they keep using this term, we need to liberate Al-Aqsa. And they're, of course, referring to the mosque with the silver dome on the Temple Mount. And you have explained, quoting multiple Islamic theologians and quoting early sources in Islam, Al-Aqsa, which literally means the far mosque, is referring to a mosque on the outskirts of Mecca. It had nothing to do with Jerusalem. And to call the Al-Aqsa mosque Al-Aqsa is just a corruption, not only of the truth, it's a corruption of Islam. Is that correct? And if it's not correct, if you could explain, what you shared to Muslims on Al Jazeera.
But first of all, the way by which Jerusalem became holy to Muslims deserves a whole lecture. So if you want, I will definitely give the friends of FIDF a whole lecture about what was the process and how Jerusalem became holy for Muslims. But in order to answer your question, sanctification of Jerusalem happened towards the end of the 7th century because of struggle between the Umayyads who controlled Islam from Damascus and the Hashem or Hashemite clan who controlled the Hijaz, means where Mecca and Medina are today in Saudi Arabia. They were fighting with each other. So the people in Mecca and Medina, the Hashemites, did not allow the Umayyads to come for Hajj. They blocked the roads and they closed the gates of Mecca in front of the Umayyads, so they cannot come to Hajj. So the people who were in Damascus, the Umayyads, chose Jerusalem as a place for pilgrimage instead of Mecca. Means it was a competition between the two centers, between the Meccan centers of the Hashemites and Jerusalem center of the Umayyads. And the whole thing is about politics, and everything in politics has to be connected to religion, because there is no division between state and church or state and mosque in Islam. So here you are. They invented the idea that Jerusalem is the place which is mentioned in the Quran, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and not where it is originally near Mecca. However, and here we come back to the Sunni Shia issue. For the Shia, who were the enemies of the Umayyads, for them, the third place in holiness after Mecca and Medina is not Jerusalem, it is the town of Najaf in Iraq. This is where Ali, the founder of the Shia, is buried, and many of the Shia scholars through the generations are buried in Najaf. So, for the Shia, the three holy places for Islam are Mecca, Medina, and Najaf, while for the Sunnah, it's Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem. Here you see, again, politics, how they manipulate politics and religion together as a mixture of messages, because in Islam, as I said, there is no division between state and mosque.
Thank you, Professor Kedar. The last question that we want to ask you, and you've been very gracious of your time, is very speculative, because as a historian, you give an analysis of history. Looking forward, looking into the next 10, 20, 30 years of history, you have some very significant forces that are fighting each other. You have this desire on behalf of Iran and its proxies to have a hegemonic Shia caliphate. You have Erdogan in Turkey wanting to reestablish the great Ottoman Empire under Erdogan as the Turkish caliphate. You have in Saudi Arabia and in the Emirates today a much more moderate Islam, moderate Sunni Islam, looking to establish that as the defining nature of the Arab world. Where do you see these various forces going? Who do you see ultimately controlling the Arabian Gulf, the Middle East, North Africa, what we'll call the Muslim world, if you could look 10, 20, 30 years into the future?
To tell you the truth, the elections, the coming elections in November in the United States will give large part of the answer, because the Muslim world is actually waiting to see who will win. And they all remember how Trump was with Iran, while how Obama and Biden were with Iran. And actually what you ask is, will Iran be further empowered or not? Because if Iran becomes more and more empowered, the scenario might be very problematic. And if I'm looking at the world, the only deterrence, or the only power which can deter the Islamic world, especially led by Iran, which is on the verge of having a nuclear weapon, the only place in the world which can prevent it is Washington, D.C., or actually the White House. And this is unfortunately how the world is now. Russia supports Iran, China supports Iran, and with this support, Iran can go forward against Saudi Arabia, against Jordan, maybe against us as well, because they feel that they are the masters of the world. Because the big powers, China and Russia, support them, and there is no answer from the other side, from Europe and America so far. That's how they feel. So let's hope that the Western world will wake up to see the danger. And let me tell you something. What Hamas did on October 7th was actually a step forward of the Islamist trend against Israel. If they succeed to topple Israel, they will continue in no time on Europe, and the Atlantic Ocean is not wide enough to keep America safe from the same fate.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
I'm happy.
It's a
Thank you
privilege
so much
for us to learn from you, to see how you think, how you read history, how you analyze. And it's just, we want to thank you. We know that you have a very busy schedule, and that you took time out to engage us, to teach us, to contextualize, so that we can see what's happening today in the context of history, in the context of Islam, its various branches. We're very appreciative. Thank you
so much. Have a good day or evening wherever you are. And let's hope for better and easier days for Am Israel, because we actually deserve it to live on our forefathers' land, which we came to after 19 centuries of exile. It is time that the world accept this fact and leave us alone.
Amen. Thank you.
Have a good time.
Okay. Wishing everyone a good week. On Wednesday, we have a very special guest, Dr. Jeffrey Berman, who he himself is a father of a lone soldier, who spent many, many decades dealing with PTSD here in the United States, with Iraqi veterans, Afghanistani veterans, Vietnam veterans, and will give us a very, very clear understanding from a medical point of view, how PTSD works, particularly how people on the front lines of battle, how PTSD happens, how it's treated, how it can be dealt with. And this is a very crucial issue. This is a first priority of the Ministry of Defense and the Army, that the soldiers who are fighting in the most brutal of conditions in Khan Yunis, in Gaza, Gaza City, Beit Hanun, Jabalia, and other places, to deal with the PTSD that already has impacted many of them and that will in the coming weeks, months, and years impact them. To learn from the mistakes of the veterans, of the failure to treat the veterans of the Yom Kippur War. Here in the United States, the failure of not being able to treat World War II, Korean, Vietnam veterans, and how ultimately FIDF partnering with the Ministry of Defense, partnering with the medical community, what's being done, why it's being done, and to understand, hopefully, a better future for the soldiers of the IDF. He's an incredible educator. He's an incredibly thoughtful man, and a man who is as much experience as anyone on this globe with PTSD to veterans. And we look forward to having him. Dr. Berman will be joining us this coming Wednesday. Wishing everyone a very meaningful week, and peace to the soldiers of Israel, strength to the soldiers of Israel, and to success as they stand on the front line, not only defending Israel and the Jewish world, but defending Western civilization. And what we've heard from Professor Kedar is a battle that transcends the Gaza Strip, but is a battle that ultimately will shape the 21st century. Thank you.